Hello, everybody. We are so excited today to have our inaugural MSF Cast. Our team has worked hard to bring industry leaders and experts together for a fantastic webinar on PCS tips and tricks. So it would be my pleasure to introduce JJ Montanaro of USAA. They are our sponsor today. JJ, do you want to come on and say hi?
Hey, Julie, great to be with you. Exciting. This is actually pretty darn exciting for the whole year. I love what you guys have done in terms of putting together a whole bunch of different events, whether it's these casts or the in-person events or the hybrid events. So it's going to be really an exciting year to take the lessons we've learned over the last couple of years, put them into action, and really what's our theme? Unite and ignite, or did I get that right? Yeah. So. All right, so a lot of cool stuff going on this year. We're happy and proud to be the presenting sponsor, and I look forward to being able to spend some time with you, but also to bring in some other folks from USA when it's appropriate for specific topics. So to me, that's also exciting because I can just kind of sit back and watch. So again, good luck. I appreciate all the hard work the whole MilSpouseFest team has done, and look forward to being a part of it and watch it happen in 2022.
Awesome. Thanks so much. We have a series of 12 webinars that we're calling MSF Cast throughout the year. And then we'll talk about that a little bit more at the end about how you can come and find us in February. And in March, we have those registrations set up. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here real quickly. Make sure I've got the right thing up here. All right. So you guys can take a look at what we've got in store here today. All right, desktop. Of course, now it worked earlier and now I'm having trouble with my screen share, of course. All right, are you guys seeing my, here we go. Now I got it, share. Okay, so this is us today. And we have some fantastic speakers here, and we're going to start off with my friend Kelly Artis, who's the COO of Millie, and then you're going to hear from JJ, and then Lisanne, and then Megan, and we're going to kind of walk through the season of the PCS cycle and talk about each part. I'm just going to double check here to make sure that I need to click a button. So I'm going to hit pause here for 1 second because apparently I haven't started this webinar, guys. All right, stop share. All right, pause recording. All right. This is what happens when you use a new platform for the first time. So I'm really excited to be here with you all today. I'm Julie, I'm the MilSpouseFest director, and we have our inaugural MSF Cast. We're bringing to you a series of 12 of these throughout the year, and we have great experts from the industry talking about PCS tips and tricks today. I'm honored to introduce JJ Montanaro of USAA. They are our presenting sponsor for our year's events. JJ?
All right, thanks. Great to be with you, Julie. I'm having a little sense of deja vu. All right, so this is going to be an exciting year. We're doing something new here, and I think taking the lessons we've learned over the last couple of years to really put together a package of meaningful, impactful events. USA is proud to be the sponsor, and really hats off to the MilSpouseFest team for putting this all together and really bringing together a lot of great resources for the folks that attend, whether it's in person, hybrid, or on these webinars or MilSpouseFest Cast. So we are excited to watch it happen. I'm excited because I get to bring in some other players from USAA and sit back and watch and let them share their advice. But today, I guess it's just me because I didn't plan well enough. So we're going to plan this PCS better than I planned my appearance here at the first MilSpouseFest Cast. So thanks for having us, Julie. Good luck in 2022, and thanks for everyone out there for all you do, because that's why we're here today.
Awesome. Thanks so much. All right, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share my screen again. And let's see. I got to have it on the right window. All right. I just did this, and you'd think I could do it twice in a row, but you know, it's given me a little bit of a difficulty. All right, let's try it again. Slideshow. All right. best laid plans, even practicing. The Zoom isn't wanting to cooperate with me today. All right. Do you guys see my PCS cast on the screen? Okay, hopefully I'm sharing the right screen. Yes, okay. And we are so excited, and I just am thrilled to be able to introduce my friend Kelly Artis. She's the COO of Millie, and then we're going to be having a chat with each one of these industry experts as we go throughout the day. So Kelly, if you'd like to go ahead and turn on your camera and join us.
Hey everybody. Hey Julie, thanks so much for having me. Don't you love technology? It's so fun.
Yeah. Well, I'm working on, I'm getting it all figured out. So
All right. Well, I want to say a huge welcome from the Millie family. Thank you all. Thank you, MilSpouseFest, for allowing us to come up here and share some of our insights. I understand today we're talking about PCSing, and that happens to be a little bit of what we do over at Millie. But I want to walk you guys through sort of some early things you need to be thinking about. So it is still January, right? It's still January. And I know that a lot of you are probably getting your requests for orders, those soft orders, so to speak, and we're starting to think about the PCS process. So a lot of what we have set up at Millie is intended to be used before the PCS. So randomly enough, we're not a company that will help you actually hands-on during your move. We want to make sure that you're set up for success and able to make informed decisions early on so that you can savor the time and the adventure, right? We all joined, we thought we were getting this big adventure when we married into the military or joined the military, but it's hard to enjoy the adventure when you're stressing out about your stuff and your things in your house, right? So I'm going to break this down into 3 separate sort of steps, right? Hopefully these will be easy enough to remember. If not, you can come on over to our booth. We have tons of resources, ebooks, toolkits, things like that to help you sort of get organized and make sure that you're gathering information in a smart way, right? So the first step right now, you need to assess your family situation and your needs. Okay. Self-awareness is huge, y'all. I'm about to turn 40 and I'm really thinking a lot about self-work and self-awareness. And that applies to your PCS too. So you want to make sure that you understand sort of objectively, and do this now when you're not stressed out. Sit down and evaluate your family, right? What are your needs? What are your priorities? What is your budget? Right? So understanding these things and working forward instead of trying to work backwards. Oh, I found this house I want. Can we afford it? It's not always the most efficient thing to do. So start now and start understanding what you're going to be looking for in a new home, at a new duty station. What are your priorities? Do you need to be near medical centers, for specialized medical care? Do you want to be near metropolitan areas for bigger or greater spouse employment opportunities? Do you want to be on post or on base to make sure that you can spend as much quality time as possible with your service member, right? So these are things you need to evaluate, have frank conversations with your family about. We have a worksheet that can actually help you out and help you understand your pattern of life. These are things that we do every day, and we think we know them until they're uprooted and disheveled. And then you're like, wait, something's missing in my life. Oh, it's my morning coffee that I used to always get at the corner store. I don't have that anymore, right? If that's a priority for you, find yourself a house with a coffee shop around the corner. These are all kind of things that we think about so that we try to set you up for success when you're making the decisions, right? So the second thing then you're going to do once you know your family's needs and you've assessed your situation, you want to do your research. And there are 3 things that I want to point out to you that you need to be looking for when you're doing your research and staying focused on. Again, do this now, not when you're stressed out and you have a million things to do, right? Do this well in advance. Once you know 2, 3 potential bases you're going to be heading towards, you can start doing this research now. So the things that you want to be doing are making sure that you're staying objective, right? It's an emotional decision buying a house, right? It's an emotional time in general. There's all kinds of transitions happening. The bulk of those decisions seem to often fall on the military spouse shoulders, for better or for worse, right? Sometimes that's a great thing. Sometimes that's a stressful thing. But you want to make sure that you're being as objective as possible. It's going to help you make better decisions and not make emotionally driven decisions that could actually put you in a worse situation financially. You could jeopardize your safety if you're making rash decisions on housing, right? If you haven't fully vetted or checked out the situation you're moving into. All of these things are important. So just make sure that you're taking a step back, and you've got the time and the luxury of time, if you're starting early enough to be able to do this and make those objective decisions based on, again, your pattern of life. We want to make sure that you're being inclusive when you're thinking about your options. Don't just kind of like, don't look at things narrowly, right? You want to make sure that you're exploring all of your options with an open mind. You're going to get a lot of opinions, right? During this process, you're going to hear from a lot of folks, all your friends, your networks, maybe your service members, colleagues are all going to have opinions about where you should live and what you should do when you get there. Should you buy or should you rent? It's great to absorb the opinions, but make sure that you are kind of broadening your aperture and making sure that that person's opinion, if it's applicable to you and your family needs, that's awesome. But if it's not, take a step back and say, well, that's great for their family, but is that going to be a good fit for our family? So when you're evaluating areas, neighborhoods, houses, cities, all of these things, ask yourself questions like, is this inclusive of where we are in life? Can we afford this area? Just because everyone says live here, doesn't mean that that's necessarily a place that you want to be, strapped for, right? If it's out of your budget. Now that you've done your assessment, you know what your budget actually is. Understand if it's something that will offer you the opportunities that you want, right? If everyone says go live out in the sticks, that's where everybody's so happy. Cool. But what if I want to work in the city, right? That's not going to work for me. I'm going to end up being miserable. Just making sure that you're taking the opinions and you're kind of sifting through them and reading between the lines, so to speak. And then the last thing about your research is you want to make sure that it's relevant. I know that I get overwhelmed with a lot of information when I'm looking at new duty stations, when researching for all of the base guides that we have on our site. There was a lot of information to sift through. And sometimes that can just be overload. And a lot of it's honestly, it's not really relevant for us, right? So you want to try to like shake things out. What do I actually need to know? Looking at a map, what points on the map are actually things that are going to be relevant for me, right? Start to try to peel away the things that you don't need and that aren't as important as you're making these, as you're gathering this research, and just focus on, again, this pattern of life things that you're trying to reestablish and zoning in on those things. At this point, you're at the time to make your decision. I think that at this point, if you followed these steps, you've got enough information to make your decisions. What are those decisions? On base or off? It's usually the first one. A lot of people make this decision before they start step 1 and 2. That's cool if you're like team on base, team off base, right? But back to my point about being inclusive, back up a little bit and evaluate the full situation. It's not always the best idea to live on base at certain duty stations, given your family's needs and pattern of life, right? Sometimes it's better to live off and vice versa. Sometimes it's too expensive to live off base and we need to live on base. So be open-minded while you're making this decision. All right, the next decision is to rent or to buy, and it's sort of the same deal. You could be like, I only buy houses. We know tons of people who only buy houses. They leave them as rentals when they leave, and they're setting themselves up for, a financial future where they've got rental income as part of their portfolio. That's amazing. That's not for everybody. Some people are just happy renting or living on base because you're essentially renting when you live on base. So just making sure that you're not stuck in this one camp, right? You need to be open-minded every single PCS because every location is different. So using all of this information that we've already gathered, now we can start to make our decisions. All right, and then step 3, we're almost done with this PCS, you guys. How cool and quick was that, right? Step 3 is going to be to assemble your team, okay? You're not doing this by yourself. Don't ever, 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 ever think you're doing this by yourself. Look around. First of all, look at the attendees in this awesome workshop. You have a wealth of knowledge usually at your fingertips, whether it's your own personal networks, whether it's all of these amazing organizations that are here today to help you out. You have folks that you can turn to for help. Your professional team is going to look like someone that you can be able to ask to run some on-the-ground tasks for you, right? Sometimes you're going to have folks in your network or friends that you've, parted ways that can help you. Go just drop by the house, make sure it's actually a real house and that it is there and that you're not sending money to some scammer, right? Sometimes those things are real parts of our lives that we need to consider. If you don't have a friend or a person in your network that you are willing to lean on in that way or even have available, I want to tell you about There are actually military spouses stationed across the United States that you can enlist, get that? You can enlist and hire to run some recon, to run some tasks for you if you need some on the ground help. We are adamant that scouts be paid and compensated for their time and their talents. They are military spouses just like you, and just like your time is valuable, so is theirs. So it is a service. Think TaskRabbit, y'all. We outsource everything nowadays. So our scouts are there to be able to help you kind of just be your person on the ground that you can call and say, hey, I need you to go smell this house. Does it smell like cat pee? Because honestly, y'all, that's a real thing. So you can send them out to kind of be your envoy, and make sure that you are, once again, making informed decisions with as much information as possible. If you're looking to buy a house, you're going to want to make sure that you're vetting your real estate agent based on their affinity and knowledge and experience with the military community. Okay, you guys, it's not enough to be military friendly. They need to actually have exhibited some prowess with working with military clients and also with the VA loan. So make sure that you are vetting specifically for those folks. If you need some help, we've got a great network. And then the last piece of the puzzle is your lender. Once again, make sure that whomever you are working with, if you are making this huge transaction in buying a home, that you're working with somebody that is savvy, not just savvy, like expert at the VA loan and navigating that process.
Thanks, Kelly. You covered a lot of great things. And one of the things that really resonated with me the most was, and I guess I frame it a little differently, aligning where we're going to live with my family priorities, right? Like, and what season of life that we're in. So I don't know if you had a chance to look at the poll, but the results have come in. We've got 39 responses. 17 of us have said 0 to 6 months for the next PCS. So 18 just went up. 7 are 6 to 12 months, and then 15 are who knows. So the majority of us are going to be PCSing in the next year. So we know that this is like really timely. So if you guys are online, go ahead and type your questions in the chat. We have a few more minutes left with Kelly. But I want to ask you, like, how did you like do a decision tree? Were you like very metric focused for your family, or did you just say, okay, we know kids are the most important thing and we're going to focus on our kids' school, and then everything else will filter on that? Like, everyone takes a different approach.
Yeah, I mean, it usually starts with schools. And it's funny. So in writing the content for Millie, I told everyone, like, I mentally PCS'd like 90 times over the course of 13 months, because I literally approached every single duty station, and the content that we have available for you guys on a duty station. I went and sourced information from groups of military spouses who were stationed there. I knew the kinds of questions that I wanted to ask, and those questions were, okay, just give me the dish, right? Tell me about the schools. Now, y'all, I'm going to put a big, huge disclaimer / caveat on schools. Please do not just go by a great school score. It feels like an easy button. There's so much more to the story with schools, and especially with your learners. So back to self-awareness. Make sure that you're evaluating and you fully understand like what kind of learner you have in your house, like what kind of student you have, what are their needs, where do they thrive, right? It's not going to be a one size fits all answer there. So you can't just go like, oh, I'm only looking at great schools 8 and above. That's a decent place to start, but there's so much more to that story. We have
so glad you've covered that, because one region is so different from another, and you cannot take that. So what we recommend is people go to their state Department of Education websites,
right.
Contact the PTA leaders, and find firsthand accounts from parents and staff in the buildings where you're looking at. Most of the folks will be very welcoming to help answer those questions. So I know we just
100%.
talked a lot about kids and not everyone has them. So do you want to talk about commuting?
Oh my word, y'all, let me just tell you that commute charts and commuting, and if you go Google something about what's the commute from, I mean, Google has gotten actually really good, I'm not going to lie. But if you go to, let's say, I don't want to come across as ugly to any of our realtor friends, but y'all, let's be real. If you're selling houses in a certain area, you're going to fudge the commute about how far it is to get to the base, right? Especially if you've got a military. We looked up some DC real estate listings, and it was like oh, 20 minutes to Quantico, and the house was in Fairfax. And we were like, yeah, no, not even on a jet. Like, that's not gonna happen. So
We have an internal joke in my team because two of us lead a community group for military spouses in the DC area that it's 33 minutes to everywhere.
everywhere. Yeah,
And
sure.
Maria is dying right now listening to me say that.
Sure,
It's
sure.
33 minutes.
Yeah, so if you want some like no joke commute times, ask a military spouse, right? Because they're going to be able to tell you how long it takes Sweetness to get home for dinner, right? So
Well, and you know, since you're bringing that up, like especially in the DC area, when you're talking about commuting to the Pentagon, not everyone gets a parking space. You need to find out how long is the walk from the parking garage, from the parking lot. So the commute from walking could be a mile.
right.
So like those are factors that not everyone thinks about if they've not been to a duty station like that before. So that's
Yeah. So I just want to brag really quickly on our DC guides. You guys, this is all on our website. I'm not going to bore you by going through all of our commute charts and whatever, but we did actually go through and assign different commuting is one of those priority things in the DC area. Every area is different. They're going to have their own sort of unique nuances for what the things are that you need to know about. I'm looking for my commute chart. I'm not seeing it. Well, anyway,
I thought I saw it on the other.
We have these really great graphics, and I'm on the fly, so I'm not going to be able to put my hands on it just right now. But knowing this isn't a good example. Okay, never mind. Forgive me. I'll pull it up and have it in my booth. Just like really understand. That goes back to my filter out the map. What do you need? What do you not need? Right? Like you need to know, and not only the commute to some ambiguous site on the base, like where does your spouse work, right? What unit are they going to be stationed at? You can find some of that information on our maps. We've literally shook out all the stuff we don't need. We don't need to know where all the Dairy Queens are, right? That'll Google will tell you. But we have like, for Fort Bragg, you can see like where the 82nd headquarters is, where the SOF community is, where this, that, and the other, which gate you're probably going to go through given, which community your service member is going to be assigned to. So all of these things are super important. And back to being relevant information for you, those are the kinds of things you want to try to look for. And back to this community is just bursting with information. All you have to do is ask. Like anyone here would be happy to. I saw a post in one of the comments about moving to Hawaii. Y'all, that's a real situation going on in Hawaii. Like reach out to your networks, and I'm sure people that are there are going to hop on that and be willing to help share any insight whatsoever to make sure that you're making a smart move.
I love the new community section of this Whova app.
That's cool.
And I was so excited to see people just jumping right in. And so, yes, and I just want to give a shout out. Thank you, Kelly. And I really hope that everyone goes and visits her in her booth afterwards. So when we're done at 1:30, the booths will be open for about 30 minutes after, and then you're going to be able to get on Zoom directly with everyone that was here. So thanks for your time. I appreciate you, and hopefully we'll be able to do some more together in the future. So,
thank you so much.
Thanks.
Happy PCSing, you guys.
All right, so now it is time to talk to JJ. So now we started the early planning, and now we're going to go into, okay, how are we going to prepare financially? So JJ, if you want to go ahead and come online here.
Cool, I'm on. So I went back and got another Coke because I just listened to Kelly talk. He's so fired up, had so much energy. That was great. And I hadn't seen the, I honestly haven't visited gomilly.com, but that looks like a great resource. So that's exciting. When you talk about PCS, I mean, for me, it's been a lot of years since we did a PCS, but when I reflect back upon those PCSs, my wife, she was an Army brat, so she really liked the idea of PCSing from place to place and reinventing herself and doing that. So when we got off of active duty about year 6+, she was kind of disappointed in me, but she's adjusted, settled down, enjoyed being in one place. And we had the kids when they graduated from high school, they graduated with friends around us that were literally the same kids they went to kindergarten and first grade with. So there were some benefits and some drawbacks. But I'm going to talk a little bit about money. I've got, I guess, 5 bullets that I'm going to talk about.
Here
And
we
the
go.
first
I'm
one,
sharing my screen now. So
okay, I'll use those. That's more for me than you, but that's kind of a way for me to work my way through it. And I think there's a little bit of overlap there with what Kelly talked about, but that's good. I'll take a little bit different approach. But from a financial preparation standpoint, when you talk about preparing, I think one of the things that we in the financial planning world or financial wellness space, we always talk about is having an emergency fund. And at USAA, one of the things that we encourage folks to do is have a PCS fund, and it's $1,000 to $3,000 depending on the next move. And you don't necessarily know where that next move is or what those expenses are going to be, but you do know you're going to move, and you may not have the timing down. So we talk about the PCS window when it usually happens. As soon as you bank on something usually happening, the military life has a tendency to throw you curveballs, so you don't really know. And having that PCS fund and really doing that self-assessment, like Kelly talked about, understanding, oh, hey, we have this boat which we're going to have to move, and it's going to cost us, or the pets, or the different things that are unique to your situation, is going to drive, what the right amount of your PCS fund is. But typically, and I've seen different studies, and you've all probably had different experiences. There are things that cost money out of pocket. That although the military does a fantastic job of covering the cost of moves, there's stuff that just falls on you, and so you have to be prepared for that, so that you don't have with all the stress of moving, don't have financial implications that are causing additional stress. You have to understand, the allowances that are available. So, Julie, you and I were talking about it yesterday, and I was trying to Google this and figure it out. But in terms of the dislocation allowance and use of the government travel charge card, or what are the rules? And I guess the Navy is rolling out currently applicable to E9s and 06s and above, the mandatory requirement to use that charge card, that travel card, for mandatory or for reimbursable expenses. And by this summer, it'll be across the force. And so the different services have different rules. You have to understand what those rules are and what your allowances are. So maybe that means, a trip to the finance office or the travel office to do that in advance of your move. So again, that whole research part that Kelly talked about, doing the preparation, is the key thing. And I think when you look at going from one area to another, when we talk about financial preparations, there's obviously different cost of living allowances, or cost of living, which is going to generate different BAH, different allowances there, which could have a big impact on your finances. If you're in the middle of Missouri and you're going to San Diego, hey, that's going to be a dramatically different set of expenses. Yeah, some of that's going to be accounted for with respect to housing allowance, but even something as simple as groceries. I live in San Antonio. My mom is up in Kansas City, so I've been up there quite a few times over the last few months. But one of the things I noticed is there was probably a 30% difference in terms of just like, hey, if I want to buy a lean cuisine or a 12 pack of Coke Zero, it costs dramatically more in Kansas City than it did down here. So you're going to have to tackle that sort of thing relative to your budget as well. So anyway, have a PCS fund, do your research in terms of costs and expenses, and that'll put you in good stead in terms of moving to the next place. The next bullet, protect your move. I guess to me, the goodness of the military system, and there's probably a lot of you cringing out there as I say that, is if you do a full government move and they move you, something breaks, something happens, you're going to have the replacement cost of that. Yeah, is there a process around that? Is there headaches? Is there time? True, but at the same time, as I made my last move here, we moved from San Antonio out into the country a little bit, and we there was a lot of stuff that got broken during that move, and so for us, we had the coverage that was provided by the mover. I didn't even really think about it, so this is on me. But really, the cost or the reimbursement that we received for broken TVs and torn up chairs was pennies on the dollar relative to full replacement costs. So I think there's some beauty to what the government does provide as far as that goes. But I think beyond that, you also have to look at, there's folks doing personally procured moves, or DIDY moves, as we used to call them, and what are the protections that are afforded there? Much more limited, and it's on you. So you might have insurance. You look at renter's insurance as an example of that might make sense for you during a move. But renter's insurance, I mean, there are specific things that are and aren't covered. You have to look at your policy, talk to your insurance company. But the greatest example, sometimes is a surprise for people, is typically breakage, is not covered. right? So if I'm moving my own stuff and I have a china cabinet and I drop it, it's going to be on me. I'm going to probably end up buying that sort of thing. On the other hand, you've got your a lot of people have looked at personal article floaters or valuable personal property policies, which are kind of all perils. So if you have a policy like that, and even if you, for example, you lose a wedding ring in a move or something, that's going to be covered typically. So I guess my call to action there is to make sure, one, you have the right coverage, and two, you understand what that coverage is. And while you might be tempted to do some sort of personally procured move or diddy move, because there's the lure or the allure of potentially making some money on that, you have to be aware that there's some risk associated with that as well. So make sure you put all those pieces together. Again, going back to the research part that Kelly talked about, do that research, do that preparation, so that as you make that move, you're ready to go and you understand what you've got to do. And I think you've got to differentiate value from valuable. So I know when we made our moves, there were certain things, birth certificates and all of our files and some of our crystal type stuff we always moved ourselves because we felt like, hey, we want to own this during the move. And so there's a difference, I think, between value and valuable as you assess what makes sense for your move, and you have to be cognizant of that. Next up, from my buy versus rent standpoint, I was going to say, hey, my rule number one when it comes to that, and I guess I'm kind of defensive in this, is that if you have any doubt, you ought to rent, and rent being either living on installation or installation housing or off base in an apartment or rental house, because there obviously are a lot more implications of buying. And so, yeah, it can go really good if you happen to make a move 2 years ago and you bought and got to see what's happened with the market over the last 2 years. You're probably sitting on something that's worth more than it was when you bought it, which is pretty exciting. But at the same time, real estate is an equity investment, if you will. It goes up, but guess what? It also goes down. So I still have the scars of 2006, 2007, 2008, when folks who made those decisions were faced with being upside down because the values dropped. So there's certainly risk there. There's also additional expenses. So when we think about buying, even if you use a VA loan, which doesn't require a down payment, that doesn't mean you don't have to have significant cash on hand to make the move, because, hey, you're going to have to buy the curtains, buy the shades, perhaps buy the lawnmower, buy the different things that you have to buy to make it yours. And that comes with a cost. And then obviously, if you're renting or in housing, then if something breaks, hey, you pick up the phone and call the landlord, call the maintenance folks, and they come fix it. And there's really not a price tag associated with that other than inconvenience. On the other hand, you buy that house and something breaks, guess what? You own it. And I think that's, again, that when you look at the total cost of ownership, it's those things that you have to buy to move in. It's those maintenance costs that are going to be there. There's those other ancillary costs like homeowners associations and that sort of thing. So you have to really include all of that in the calculations before you make that move. So I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It could be a very good thing, but it's just one you want to make after you've walked through all the additional requirements or obligations that it's based on, and also walking through the what ifs. So, hey, if I get a PCS in 2 years instead of 3 or 4, how does that impact me? Am I planning on making this a rental property? And if that's the case, we always talk about, or I talk about, the fact that, hey, equity, it's an equity, like I just said earlier, a house, but it also is, so with equities, you have to have a longer time frame in terms of, in my mind, in terms of you buy it with the intent of owning it for an extended period. That doesn't mean you have to live in it, because we don't know what the future holds as far as the next PCS. But I think before you buy, you ought to have walk through the idea that, okay, I may be a landlord and it may be sooner than not. What happens if I don't have a tenant? What happens if, so the whole idea of an emergency fund becomes more and more important, because there could be expenses associated with that. So anyway, walk through that. Don't be cavalier about it. It's a big decision and one you want to get right. As far
a lot of great stuff in the chat, JJ.
okay.
And they're really loving what you're talking about with the personally procured moves. And I just want to I know that Lisanne's going to talk about that here coming up. But so many people said they didn't know that they could do a partial personally procured move, because we often take a lot of stuff in our cars and you can weigh your car and get that money back. So I just wanted to highlight that. And I
Good point.
also we were one of those families that bought in 2007. And we ended up
Ooh.
holding on to that house for 10 years. And it worked out for us, but yeah, it's definitely, there were other times in our life that I wasn't really feeling ready to be a landlord. So we would sell our property if we owned one. But now I've done this a few times. So now I feel
You're
like
veteran. Yeah.
landlord ready.
That's
So
good. And I think you never know. I mean, every time frame is going to be different. Experiences can be different. But I knew people that had I actually had family who had a lot of rental properties in Florida, and so I can still remember my brother, and we were looking at a spreadsheet of all the properties and the values, and he was kind of pumping out his chest about how good things were. And it was in that time frame, 2006, 2007, and so what happened is he went from having a whole bunch of equity on the balance sheet, and his net worth dropped 70 or 80% as the market dropped, because Florida was really hard hit in that drop. But the good thing for him is guess what? The rents didn't decrease. The rents essentially stayed the same and went up over time. So it really took him probably 10 or 12 years before the values went back to where they were. But over that time, because he had a plan in place and he had cash to be able to accommodate all the things that come with renting properties, he didn't get hurt too bad. So it's all about having that plan and being able to execute it. What I get concerned about is if people just say, I'm going to go do this, and they haven't done the legwork and they haven't got the foundation in place in terms of the emergency fund or the rental fund or whatever you want to call it in place, where that can be dangerous.
So did we talk yet about all of your things on your list? I'm not sure that we covered all of the list.
Yeah. So real quick, I'll hit some resources.
Yeah.
So as most of you probably know, move.mil that migrated over to Military OneSource. So I think you're dropping these links in the chat, aren't you, Julie?
Actually, Google is, but yes, they're being
Okay.
dropped.
All right. Okay. So you got the militaryOneSource.mil/PCS. And again, sometimes people put their nose up at the government resources out there, but having just gone through it, there's a lot of great resources. There's a plan your move that can create checklists for you that are based on your personal situation. At USA, we have our own hub, usa.com/yourmilitarylife. So whether you're PCSing, deploying, leaving the military, there are resources, checklists, tools, and calculators that you can access via that. I think we put in there the joint travel regulation, which if you want to go to sleep, you can go there. But all the details of the different things we talked about are in that. And then like Millie that we just talked about, PCS Grades, I know is a partner here. Great resources. And then the last one I'll mention is the FinRed, finred.usalearning.gov. So that's kind of the military spouse, MilSpouse, money mission or something like that is there. But all the services have platforms where there's great advice, great videos, whether you're buying a car, but talking about PCS deployment. So I think that the DoD has put a lot of effort into creating resources that are engaging and powerful. And I would take advantage of them. Like I said, I haven't spent that much time until the last week or so looking at them, and I was like, hey, I'm pretty darn impressed with what's going on there. And then my last point was just going to be, hey, new place, new you. It's a great opportunity to kind of, as I said, with one of my wife's favorite things relative to this is reinvent yourself. So that means from a financial standpoint, it means reinvent your spending, where you're spending your money, how your budget's working, how much you're saving, re-looking at your insurance, because obviously from a property insurance standpoint, each state's going to have different rules and requirements. And obviously you want to make sure you have the right amount of life insurance and those sorts of things. So new place, new you, good opportunity to refresh and revisit from top to bottom your financial plan.
I think those are great tips. And I know that I think I may have shared this with you before, JJ. This is the first duty station in our 25 years of being married that we've lived that's been a lower cost of living. So it's really nice to be able to do that and save for upcoming retirement. Yeah, you definitely gave some great tips. And another resource area that I want to like throw out there, you mentioned going to your command for financial help, but another option are the relief aid organizations.
Right.
You know, several of them, including NMCRS, offer free budget counseling in preparing you for your move. And especially if it's your first PCS, or you're just not sure, it's been a while and you're just not sure about what your entitlements are, they have trained caseworkers that can help you walk through those. I'm a little concerned about the mandated use of the government travel card for folks that just aren't used to that. So that's just my personal thing. Just make sure you know what you're going to be reimbursed for and what all of the rules are about everything. There's a lot to learn, and it's easy to fall into the rabbit hole of the joint federal travel regulation.
I put it there, but it's pretty deep. And the other thing is the services are all different in terms of how they implement that guidance.
That's absolutely right. Like, how many days do you get paid for when you are, you know, in the process of traveling? You can stay at a hotel for this many days in this location, and then across the whole trip. And then some places want a non-availability statement, and other services don't. So it's just asking those questions and making sure you've done your research is the best tip.
Yeah. And ask them to the right people, right?
That's
But anyway,
right.
so yeah, it's exciting time. Like I said, I think that's one of the, from my wife's perspective, and probably a lot of people, one of the cool things about military life. Also, one of the hassles. I don't think, no matter how you slice it, moving is a pain in the tail.
So you and I are going to be on our February MilSpouseFest event, Unite and Ignite, here in a few weeks. But then we're also going to have you come back and talk about military tax tips in March.
Oh, tax tips.
So I
exciting.
know, but I just want to give you that plug. So while everyone's here, April, Mary, Maria, whoever is online is going to drop those links to make sure you guys can follow us and then come and engage with our content. There we go, next month. So
cool.
If anyone else has anything else, just make sure you remember you can go see JJ in the exhibitor booth following the end of this time, and you can ask those personal questions about, do I need a personal articles floater? How he'll get you hooked up with all the right I
always get stories whenever I go to events about that particular, the valuable personal property. Hey, I lost my wedding ring. And we have some great USA member stories where they've lost, for example, their wedding ring. They had that policy. We replaced it, wrote them a check. And then a month later, as these things always happen, oh, I found it. It was buried under the seat of my car. So you know, USA members on the whole are fantastic. And so they call back up and say, hey, I've got to send this money back to you. I'm like, okay, that's a pretty good story. So.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah. And, you know, if for those of us who do have them, I think that there's actually guidance out there that says that you need to get new appraisals every so many years, because the cost of the metals and the things can change. They fluctuate. Just my last little tip with those, it is worldwide coverage. So
yeah, there you go.
Which is helpful. So, all right. Well, thank you so much.
Hey, thanks, Julie. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. Absolutely. So now it's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Lisanne Lightfoot, and she's representing PCS grades here today. And she's a mom with kids who's done these personally procured moves. So I feel like this is a great segue to talking about that. So Lisanne.
Hi, thanks so much for having me on today. Yeah, I love how we're moving through the PCS journey here. And so I'm going to be talking about some of the more particular situations that people might face, which is PPM, formerly known as a Diddy move, and moving with kids. And both of those I've done several times. So I'll be sharing some of my stories and experience, but I definitely want to be looking for your questions and answering anything that you want to know about those two situations as I'm going along. So if you don't know me yet, I'm Lisanne Lightfoot. I'm a Marine Corps spouse, mom to 5 kids. I'm a professional writer and a published author. And you might know me as the Seasoned Spouse, which is the name of my blog and my social media pages. but I'm also the content editor for PCS Grades, which is what I'm representing here today. At PCS Grades, I've been working there for about 2 years on their area guides, which you're going to hear some more about, and all of their blog content covering various moving situations and the different challenges that military families face during PCS moves. I really love being able to support military families throughout PCSing, because I know that making things just a little bit easier can have such a huge impact on the whole family. So my PCS experience has been eclectic. We've done a little bit of everything, and I've definitely learned from some of my mistakes along the way. So our first move after marriage was from Quantico, Virginia to North Carolina, Camp Lejeune, with a crawling baby. And we did a PPM, which was called a Diddy move at the time. And the reason we did that, to be perfectly honest, is because my husband didn't tell me that there was an option for the military to move your household goods. He wanted to make the profit from a PPM, and so he figured that type of move made the most sense. And since the service member is the one who has to apply for the moving paperwork and set it all up with the transportation office, he did that and told me to pack up our 3rd-story walk-up apartment. And so without any elevator, we were carrying all of our furniture down 3 flights of stairs and loading the U-Haul ourselves. So from that move, I definitely learned about the importance of purging your closets and your furniture before you PCS, not waiting until afterwards. And I also just realized on a more basic level the need to ask a lot more questions about the options for movers during that military-sponsored PCS. Later in his career, when I did know more about PCSing, we chose to do a second PPM. And that one was because my husband's orders changed quickly. So when we inquired about housing at our next base, they told us there was a hot fill house that was available, but only if we could move in next week. So we went straight from the housing office to the U-Haul store, where we reserved a truck and bought the boxes and all the packing material and started packing. And I had our entire house for a family of 6 packed up and loaded into the truck within 1 week. So yes, it was a little bit ridiculous, but it enabled us to move quickly and get into a neighborhood where we wanted to be. So really, with the right amount of packing material, with the bubble wrap and the boxes, you really can pack up your house. One of our favorite things from that experience and from subsequent PPMs is that we learned to buy those big green saran wrap furniture wrap rolls. They come in either a short length or a long length, and we would wrap all of our furniture in this green plastic wrap. And when you load it into the truck, when it's all wrapped, that keeps it from rubbing against other objects, from getting scratched and dented, and it really cut down on the amount of damage. I definitely got a little dizzy sometimes walking in circles around all of our furniture with this giant plastic wrap, but it did really help a lot. So that's one of our favorite pieces of material to use. And our most recent move last year was also a PPM. And that time it was mostly because it was difficult to find and schedule military movers during the pandemic. So we did get a little smarter that time, and we loaded our household goods into an ABF trailer, because I learned that you do not have to drive yourselves and you do not have to do everything yourselves for a PPM. You are allowed to hire out. You can hire moving assistants, you can hire a trailer, you can hire a truck driver. You just need to keep in mind that anything you hire out will be cutting into your own profit from your move. So we loaded into a trailer, and then the company drove it across the country and delivered the goods for us, which allowed us to do a door-to-door move. We invested in some good moving supplies that time. So we bought our own metal dolly. We bought shoulder straps, which are called a shoulder dolly, and that can be used for moving your washer and dryer and other heavy furniture equipment. And really just furniture blankets, more of those moving materials, and lots of bubble wrap. So if you are considering doing a PPM, a personally procured move, or if you want to be old-fashioned and call it the Diddy move, then please go ahead and ask your questions in the chat. I'm going to check quickly and see if we've had any coming in, but I know there was some talk earlier about people that
There
had.
were lots of comments earlier that we can pick up from, but do you want to talk about like how you, the same question I asked Kelly, but like how did you decide where you wanted to live? Like what kind of decision trees did you use? Were you focused on like, do you homeschool your kids, or were you worrying about a commute, or was your financial concerns about your budget for your rental or your buying a house? Like talk through that. As someone who's done this a few times, I think that's what people get most overwhelmed with, is where do they start?
Sure. Absolutely. And PCS grades is a huge part of this, so I'm definitely happy to talk about it. But for us, we always kind of start with the family's needs. Where do our children need to go to school? Because as they've gotten older, schools have gotten much more important. I saw some questions in the app earlier today asking about the importance of schools. And I think it's really flexible depending on your kids' ages. You know, you can go almost anywhere for preschool, and that's probably not going to be a determining factor for your family. But as they get into middle school and high school, it's going to be very important to choose the right school that's the right distance from the base or from your house, that has a curriculum that's going to match up with what your student has already done, or if you know where they're going next, that's going to match up with their next curriculum. So all of those factors are really important. We do choose housing based on school districts because those two things are just intrinsically linked. Sometimes we live on base and we've lived off base. We've bought a house twice now. So it's just been a variety of factors depending on the situation. But the reason that PCS grades is so helpful with all of that is that I think when we first get our orders, the first thing we do is go into research mode. You know, moving to a new state or a new area, you want to learn as much as you can. And usually you're starting from scratch. So PCS grades is super helpful. I'm proud to have worked on our area guides that don't exist for every single base yet, but we're working on it. We've started with the larger bases, and we have over 100 area guides now that you can look up specific information for your base. What amenities are available on base? How many base housing neighborhoods are there? What are the popular off-base neighborhoods, and what will it cost to move into them? Where are the schools? What are your choices? What do you do in the area? I love writing about local attractions and where to eat and things to do. So it really gives you a taste of your next duty station so that you can start being informed and asking questions to your realtor if you're working with a real estate agent, or to the base housing office if that's what you've chosen to do. And the thing that I love about our PCS grades platform is that all of our reviews are from other military families. And so you can log in and for free and see all these reviews about base housing and off base housing, and which realtors to work with, which moving companies to work with. And you know that all those reviews are coming from other military families who have used that service before.
I think that's fantastic. And I know, like, so you guys have reviews of moving companies too? Because that's something people talks a lot about. Okay.
Absolutely. The grades on PCS grades can be applied to housing neighborhoods on or off base, but they can also be applied to moving companies. So if you've had a good or a bad experience that you want to share with other military families, it's an excellent place to do that. And coming soon, we're going to have the ability to give grades for realtors. So I'm sorry, real estate agents. So if you have worked with a very military friendly company, or you had someone that you highly recommend to other military spouses moving into the area, then you can give your real estate agent an A rating. If you had someone that really was not helpful and you chose not to go with them, or you just had a bad experience, then you can leave a rating for that as well. And we have some large networks of real estate agent companies that are working with us and are really proud to provide the best quality and the best services to military families as they're moving.
Thanks, Lisanne. I appreciate that. So you mentioned you'd use PPM a couple different times. So from a financial perspective, I know you mentioned the one move was 1 week. Did you feel like you were financially prepared for that upfront cost?
Well, we got lucky with that one because it ended up being an in-state move. So it was a PCS. We did get funding. The bases were just far enough, but they were only about 2 hours apart. And that meant that we could do a one-way U-Haul rental, which was so much cheaper. We just had to scramble and make some adjustments to return it. But we did make a lot of money off of that move because we did everything ourselves. And because it was such a short time frame, we only needed the truck for, a minimum couple of days. We knew friends at each location that could help us load and help us unload. So that was really like the bare bones, cheapest, fastest move that you can do. I would not recommend it for every single situation. It really depends on your physical abilities, on your children's ages, if they're going to be helpful or not helpful to the moving process. What your family is able to do up front. When you do a PPM, I think one important thing to note is that you're paying all that money up front. There is no, there's a separate charge for like the government charge card that you can use if you're driving and if you're getting like the fuel reimbursement and all that. But for the actual PPM cost, if you rent a U-Haul, if you are buying the boxes, anything that you're doing specific or related to your move, it's going on your own credit card or you're paying out of pocket. And there will be a military reimbursement process, but that takes 3 months typically. So usually we do have enough in savings that we make sure that we are able to handle the cost of a move up front. But if you're not prepared for that, or if that's news to you, then you really need to look at your financial situation, I think, and assess, do we have the money to put up front on a U-Haul? Or, if I had to go and find out next week that I'm moving, would I be able to buy all of the moving materials and get my family where we need to go? So it is definitely an important thing to note. And it's so important to know that reimbursement can be a really long time reaching you.
Yeah, and that's why I really wanted to highlight that, because I see a lot of like positive comments about great info. We're looking at a PPM, but like just knowing that and the timeline, definitely. So there's some services that I've heard that it's taken even longer than 3 months, like especially if you've got a school en route and it's going to be an extended time till you get to your ultimate duty station to check in. You have to wait until you get to that last stop. So something that happens in the summer, especially during COVID right now, we've found a lot more families that are having to do these last minute PPMs like you just talked about. Mm-hmm. So I mentioned this before, I'm going to throw it out again as a resource. If you get into the summer and you got last minute orders and you don't have a mover and you have to move yourself, and you don't have those savings set aside, that's when you reach out to your relief aid organizations, because oftentimes they can offer you interest-free loans. So just my little plug on
it is a great resource, because you can certainly stand to make money on the PPM, and some people do talk about that as being their primary reason for doing it. But just be aware that you're not making that money right away. And so you do need to consider your financial situation going into it. And, can you afford to wait 3 months before getting paid that $5,000 or $10,000 for the move?
So when you were deciding on your second one, when you used the ABF trailer, did you use, like, were there PCS grades resources, or just do your own research on, like, should I use a pod? Should I use the trailer? Like, how did you come up with that?
I actually learned about the ABF trailer option from a PCS grades webinar, which was crazy because I'm on their staff and I should probably know that already. And as I mentioned, we'd already done 2 PPMs of our own, but I just constantly learn new things from the other military spouses that we interview. So if you don't know, we have a weekly webinar on PCS grades every Tuesday at noon. And I and my co-host, Tessa Robinson, who you may know, we interview all these different experts from the moving industry. Some of them are military spouses who have had their own moving experience. Some of them are service members. Some of them are from Transcom, real estate agents, lenders. It's just such a broad variety of people. And it's great to kind of crowdsource all of these ideas and tips and tricks and figure out what works for you. So after working with PCS grades for 2 years now and listening to all of the webinars, I've learned so much. And now we're at the point where my husband is looking into his final PCS move when he retires. And I've brought up questions and explained things to him that he said, oh, I didn't realize it worked that way. Like, well, here's what happens. And here's what Transcom told me. So now you know.
So since we have like a couple more minutes, I just want to ask you, so you heard the poll results. you saw that more than half of most of the majority of us are going to be moving in the next year that are listening today. And then I think half are in the next 6 months. So if you don't have your orders yet, you know you have to move. What are your top tips for what you should be doing with your time? Because I'm in this situation right now, and I'm just like over here, like biting my fingernails. Like I know it's going to be stressful to find a rental, and I can't look because I don't know where I'm going. So what are you going to do?
So I definitely start with some of that research. You know, if you don't know exactly which base you're going to, but you know that it might be one of 3 different options, then you start doing all the research right away to figure out, well, if we go here, we probably want to live in this school district. We probably want to be near this neighborhood. We probably want to be within 20 minutes of the base, or whatever your personal priorities are. But on a more personal level at home, I always start with going through the garage and the closets. And there are so many things that you probably don't need to touch in your house between now and moving day. So they could get packed up now, you know, if you're doing a PPM. If you're using military movers, do not pack your stuff in advance. They will need to see inside of every box. But it's always good to clean out and to really evaluate. You know, we have these old baby clothes. We have this whole shelf in the garage that could probably be cleared off. We have all these craft items that are liquid or flammable, or they won't be able to move with us. So we probably need to dispose of them safely now. We have furniture that if it's already cracked and missing hardware and falling apart, do we really want to move with it one more time? Do we want to replace it before the move, or just get rid of it now and wait to replace it once we're at our next location? So all of those things can be so useful. And then I think once you get your orders, that's where you can really benefit from a site like PCS Grades. We have photos of the base housing. We have reviews of people in the different neighborhoods, both on and off base. So you can start to get a feel for, are we going to be in a 3-bedroom house? What does the layout look like? And we've gone so far as to look up the floor plans online. If we're in base housing, those are all publicly available. And if we know we're in a certain neighborhood with a certain number of bedrooms, you can look up that floor plan and say, okay, it says that this wall in the living room is this long. Is our couch really going to fit there? Or how are we going to position the bunk beds in the kids' rooms? So the more that you can research ahead of time and kind of answer those questions for your family, I think it takes so much of that weight off your shoulders. And it also lets you make decisions so much more quickly when you're on the spot and trying to figure out, hey, housing just called us. Do we want this house? Yes or no? If you've done your research and you know what the comparable things are in the area, then you know whether that's a great choice or whether you're going to hold out and wait for something different.
Thank you. I think those are fabulous tips. I hope that you all have enjoyed listening to Lisanne today, and you get to hear from her more at the end of the webinar, because she's going to be in the PCS Grades exhibitor booth. And I believe both you and Millie were doing some giveaways, right?
We are. So I definitely encourage you to stop by our exhibitor booth afterwards. I will be available through a Zoom link, or you can just stop by and participate in the booth, which is kind of like a page. We are giving away two prizes, actually. One of them will be an autographed copy of my newest book, which is called Open When: Letters of Encouragement for Military Spouses. And this has an entire section on PCS moves, but also mentions PPMs. It talks about some of my personal stories, but also just encouraging messages for military spouses to hear throughout their journey. And then we're giving away a fun wine tumbler that says it's 1700 somewhere.
Awesome. I may have gotten one of those from a friend of yours who was there,
Excellent.
and I loved that cup. So anyway, well, thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and we're going to go ahead and introduce our next speaker. So I would be honored to introduce Megan Harlis, and Megan is joining us today with PCS Like a Pro. So she runs a fantastic community Facebook group where she provides helpful tips on the moving process, and mostly a lot of people asking about their claims. So Megan.
Hi, everybody, and thank you for having me today. I am going to share my screen because I got a few slides to share, and it'll be much better than just watching me. Let me get this pulled up. maybe. There we go. So a little bit about me first. I always feel like if you're going to invite somebody to come up and to talk about things, they should be able to kind of have some street cred to go with it. And so this is mine. In those 16 years of being married to my husband, we have completed 10 PCSs. We have number 11 coming this summer. No, we do not know where we are going to yet. We are in that group that is still waiting patiently, as patient as possible, waiting on our orders as to where we are going. But we've done 10, number 11's coming, and we've done 2 local moves in there. I am a veteran, so I've experienced PCSing from both the service member side of it and then also as the spouse and family side of it. And I really work a lot as being a PCS reform advocate. Here you can see all the different panels and councils that I sit on between members of the Army with Transcom, where we have representatives from all the different service branches there. And then also with the moving industry as well. When I got involved with PCS reform, it was a way to kind of bring all the stakeholders to the table to work on what the issues were and hopefully to help improve the process and the experience for our families. Just really quick, this is where you can find me and how you can get a hold of me. I think we're going to be dropping these links into the comments, but if not, you can visit the booth and I will have all of this there listed for you. For our Facebook page, PCS Like a Pro, we do a weekly webinar as well. So next Wednesday, air tags is a big hot topic right now. I know somebody in the community had asked about those. And actually next Wednesday, we are going to have the spouse that's involved in that current article going around we're going to talk with her about her experience with using the air tags. And also we're going to have a member from the moving industry on as well with her to kind of talk about from the industry side as well, you know, what they think of it and, you know, with families using air tags. So definitely something to tune in. I know a lot of people are planning to use them. We plan to use them with our PCS coming this summer. So it'll be interesting to see how things go with that as well. The first thing I want to be able to provide to you are some resources. Some of these have already been talked about. Military One Source, as JJ had mentioned earlier, Move.mil has transitioned to Military One Source. So if you need to set up your move, you can access DPS through Military One Source. And they've got a lot of other good, just PCS related information that is listed there. You can get the DPS help desk number. There's contact info for each of your service branches and for the MCO checklists and just all sorts of other items there as well. The regulations, these are the 3 biggest regulations I recommend that everybody should know. So the first one, the Appendix B, is the tender of service. And this is for the moving companies, what they are contracted to do and what they are obligated to do. So if you need to know what they are held to, what they're supposed to do, how they're supposed to handle something, you can look that up and be able to see it all listed right there. The attachment K1 is what's known as the It's Your Move document. So when you go to your local transportation office or you sit in on a levy brief, a lot of times they'll say, you know, read the It's Your Move document, and it's actually part of the DTR. So attachment K1 is that. And then JTR Chapter 5 is the regulation that's going to govern all of what your entitlements are. So if you need to know what your weight entitlement is, if you need to know how per diem is authorized, how DLA is authorized, you can find all of that in the JTR Chapter 5. And if you are in my PCS Like a Pro, your Smooth Move Facebook group, we do put all of these regulations in the files so they're easily referenced. And as they are updated throughout the year, we update them as well. The places we go, Facebook group, if you're in that process of deciding where you want to live at your next location, Places We Go is a great group where you can be able to ask those questions about the neighborhood, about the commute that Kelly talked about where are, you know, if you have a child involved in taekwondo or basketball, where are the gyms at? Where are the sporting teams at? So that group can help provide a lot of information. And then also your local spouses groups. If you're going to Fort Bragg, join the Fort Bragg spouses group. If you're going to Patrick Space Force Base, join that local group as well. As Kelly had mentioned previously also, I mean, asking these questions to people that are there, that are living there, that have this information goes a long way in helping to make your PCS successful and helping you decide where you need to go. So I'm going to take you through what the PCS process is. So the first thing that you need before anything is you need your official orders. You got to receive your official orders before you can really do much of anything when it comes to setting up your PCS. As Lisanne talked about the PPM process, with it, any expenses that you accrued prior to your official orders being issued do not count towards any operating expenses that you have, whether it's a PPM, partial or full type of deal. You have to have your official orders before those expenses can be counted. So once you have your official orders, you can set up your move. You do go to DPS, which again can be accessed through Military OneSource. If you are doing a full PPM, a partial PPM, or military contracted move, you do need to set up that on DPS. So like my family, we usually always do a partial PPM. We take all of our valuable things that we can fit into our car and our cars with us, and we want to be paid for that weight that we're moving. So we have to set up a move on DPS as a PPM with our estimated weight there, and then also another move on DPS for the military to come and move our stuff as well. And then again, if you're going overseas and your orders authorize different shipments, you have to set up a move for each shipment as well. So if you are authorized unaccompanied baggage, you need to set up a specific shipment for that. If you're authorized non-temp storage, you have to set up a different shipment for that. So for each shipment that you're authorized or want to do, you have to set one up for that. The next piece of the move is where the communication really starts. So the transportation office will contract your move out to what's called a TSP, Transportation Service Provider, and they will be the company that is responsible for your move and will coordinate all of the parts of your move. So once that company gets assigned, you'll start to receive some emails from DPS that tells you who your assigned company is. A lot of times that TSP will assign some local agents, and you'll get emails that tell you the local agent that's going to be there packing your home or delivering your items. And then they'll also reach out to, establish who your move coordinator is. And this person will be your single point of contact for issues and concerns during the process, and to verify your dates and to set up the pre-move survey. So when you have the pre-move survey piece, what they're going to do is they're going to come out. Most of them are transitioning to being virtual now, whether it's through like a FaceTime call or you're basically taking a video and uploading that. But the purpose of it is that they want to be able to verify exactly how much stuff that you have. They want to see if there's anything that's oversized. They want to make sure that they are bringing the proper amount of equipment for your move. The right amount of boxes, the right size of boxes. They want to make sure that they staff your move properly. You don't want to have 17,000 pounds and then only one guy show up to pack your home. It's going to take quite a long time. And they also want to make sure that the truck that they're going to be assigning to also has enough space in it for your size of shipment. After that will finally come the packing days. So the packing days, it really is the adage of everything that is out will be packed. If you do not want it packed, you need to secure it somewhere. You need to take whatever suitcases and luggage is going with you, put it in a closet that can be locked, put it in your car that can be locked, take your trash out to the dumpster, but anything that is out generally does get packed. And there are some good stories out there of random weird things that have been packed on accident. So if you don't want it packed, put it away somewhere. Also on the packing day, you're going to do the high value inventory. So if you have anything that's of high value, you can fill out that inventory of that day. When it gets packed, those boxes get marked. And then you also will receive an inventory for the boxed items. That inventory usually happens near the end of packing. There's usually somebody that's assigned to it. They start creating the inventory. Then you get to your load day, which usually comes right after your pack days, where they show up and everything gets loaded onto the truck. And at this time, you also receive another inventory for your furniture. Usually the driver will be the one that does that. At the end of the day, you'll be able to review your inventories before signing them. I highly suggest you do, and we'll talk more about that on our next slide when we talk about best practices. But you should definitely work on reviewing your inventory and taking your time to do it as well. If for some reason you have a shipment that's being crated, like you have an Oconus shipment that gets crated, those should be sealed at your residence. Now, for some reason something happens and they need to take them to the warehouse to do it, you do have the right to be there, to go watch them load the crates there and to seal them there. Delivery day is a day that we are all very excited for because we finally get our stuff back. So delivery day comes, the most important thing that you need to do that day is really check off the inventory numbers as items are coming out of the truck or coming out of the crates. That is a customer responsibility that you should be aware of. Some companies provide a bingo sheet, some do not. Some people, we've done various methods of just writing them down on a piece of paper, and then like during a break, I would check them off our regular inventory, but this helps you be able to identify if there is anything that is missing. And then also on that date, on the delivery day, anything that is noticeably damaged. So like if it's usually a piece of furniture, like you'll notice if your dresser has a crack in it, you'll notice if there's like a dining room chair with like the leg snapped off. So anything that's noticeably damaged or missing should be noted that day on the loss or damage at delivery form. And then the other important thing that you need to do on delivery day is you need to open and inspect all of your high value items that were listed on your high value inventory. If for some reason you don't do that and you just sign the inventory forms and you find out something in those boxes was broken, you will not be able to go back later and file a claim. So you really need to open those up and inspect those on delivery day. The claims process is again filed on DPS. You will learn everything is done on DPS here. As long as you file your claim within the claims timeline, and you can see them listed here. So regular household goods and unaccompanied baggage is 180 days from the date of delivery. And then your non-temp storage is 75 days from the date of delivery. You file all that information on DPS. You do have to substantiate your claim sum. So whether it's through a link from Amazon or Ashley Furniture or Pottery Barn, which is what a lot of people do, they just provide a link to it. Some people have receipts or invoices, or if it's something of value that you have an appraisal for, you'd provide that. If at some point you and your TSP cannot come to an agreement, you can transfer it to the MCO, which is the Military Claims Office, and they can help mediate your claim for you. And then the last part of the process is the survey. The customer satisfaction survey, again, located on DPS, directly impacts how the TSP is awarded contracts in the future. So if you had a good move or a bad move or somewhere in between, it's really important that you fill out this survey to let Transcom know how your experience went, if there were any issues, and to also impact how they will be awarded shipments on future moves as well. And then the last slide I have real quick, I know I threw a lot of information at you, and I know there's a lot happening in the chat, but I'm just going to highlight a few things here because JJ already touched about renters insurance earlier. It's a big thing. I always say you should have it because I dropped it in the chat as well, but the military only is liable for $6 per pound up to $75,000. So if you have a 10,000 pound shipment, it's only covered at $60,000. And if it takes more to replace your stuff, you should have some sort of policy there in place for that. I always suggest have your own inventory. It's always important to have, if for some reason you have a catastrophic loss, it's important to be able to itemize as much as you can. So do it before you move. Do the purge. It's my favorite thing in the world. Take the time now, especially if you know you're moving in the next year, start going room by room and figuring out what you don't need anymore. My rule of thumb, if it doesn't fit, if you haven't used it at this duty station, if you know you're not going to use it at your next duty station and it provides no sentimental value to you, it might be time to consider giving it away. Or save it, have a great yard sale and have some extra PCS cash, but do the purge. It also saves you on your household goods weight as well, because nobody wants to go over on their weight. Pre-pack as a way to prep. This is mostly like, take your silverware tray, wrap it in saran wrap. Take your knife block and wrap that in saran wrap, because you don't want knives falling out and stabbing you in the toe when you're unpacking. All your little office supplies or little toys, put those into Ziploc bags, put trash bags over your clothes like garment bags. It just helps make the packing phase easier, and also unpacking, knowing that you're not having to dig paper clips and pens out of the bottom of a box because they're all already in bags. Be involved in the process is a big one. Don't just invite your crew into your house and sit on the couch watching your soaps, catching up on Grey's Anatomy. Be involved, walk around, see how things are going, make sure your name is being spelled right, take a look at how they're labeling boxes. So you really need to be involved. Review and double check your inventory. So on your furniture inventory, they're going to have a lot of damage assessment codes to identify the pre-existing damage of your furniture. And this is where you really have to take a moment to look, because they are notorious for kind of just filing everything in there as scratched and damaged and dented and broken and shattered and gouged and whatever else you want to throw in there. You do have the right to say that you disagree with their assessment. At the bottom, there's a remarks box that you can note in there that you don't agree with their damage assessment codes. And should something happen when you show up on the other end, you have that as a way to kind of protect you when going through the claims. And then, of course, as always, know the regulations, policies, where you can turn to for help, and the resources is available, as I mentioned on the previous slide.
You covered so much information, and I'm so glad we're recording this, Megan, so that way people can go back and capture that. And I know that one of the folks in the chat, April, said that she took a screenshot of the timeline. So are these resources did you put this in your booth as well?
I haven't yet, but when we get
Okay.
done with this today, I will go and drop it in there so you can all go take it and reference it.
Yeah, because I think that was so helpful. So I know there's a lot of questions in here, but I had one of my own. So I'm going to take a point of personal privilege here. So I think I shared with you that when we moved to where we are now in Virginia Beach, we actually ended up having to put a large amount of our stuff into storage, like a quarter to a third of our stuff is in a storage unit. And I know that they'll pick up from 2 locations, but you mentioned, oh, they need to pack everything. Well, everything's already packed. So how does that work on the next move?
So yeah, the current liability for the moving companies is anything they take possession of, regardless of who packs it, they are liable for. But they do need to be able to open and inspect to verify the contents of it for the inventory. Now, if you packed really good, where you wrote on the outside of the boxes, like, these are the closet items, that this box contains my hats, shoes, scarves, winter gloves, and this box is our everyday dishes and glasses and silverware, then that's how you really want to do it, because they're gonna, if you wrote anything on the box, that's how they're really going to do their inventory. They might look in it and the first thing they see are some shoes. They're going to label that box as shoes, but under your shoes, you might have something more. So if you are in that situation where you need to put some of your stuff into storage and have it picked up from storage, because they can do a pickup from 2 locations, it's usually within 50 miles of either your losing location or your gaining location. You really should, have it packed and labeled well. So that way, if they do that, just open and take a quick look, but you've got it labeled on the outside, they're going to go off of what you have it labeled as. And your inventory will look so much better having it more detailed than just shoes, unless you have more in there.
Those are really great tips. I did not know this before the last PCS, that they would pick up from one place. We separated our stuff out and they moved that stuff into the storage unit for us when we got here. So that really helped out a lot. I was just hoping they wouldn't have to open all the boxes. They probably won't. They probably won't really be that interested. So movers picked up all of our stuff from storage and they repacked about 80% of it. I was living with my parents and had all the household goods in the storage unit. I watched them like a hawk. So that was Mary on our team who shared that. The move timeline was great. Best practices. We've shared some of the links in here. So what was the other thing I was thinking about? Oh, so the required delivery date. So this question gets asked every year. Everyone gets so anxious. They're trying to do a door-to-door move, or it's like in the height of the summer when movers are like a scarce commodity. And right now we know that there's a labor shortage, right, Megan? So what is the timeline for that? Like, what is the process? Like, if you're given a next day and then it's like, oh, well, now we're not going to be here for another week. Because I know a lot of people are like, oh, I'm just going to go buy all this stuff. But then like, who owns it and how does that work?
Yeah, so delivery dates, required delivery dates, also known as RDD, are set by US Transcom. It goes off of usually the weight and distance that you're moving. They usually add in a few extra dates in there. There are some federal regulations that get tossed into there too with how many days as well, because truck drivers can only be on the road for so many hours a day and they have to have so much rest. So the length of the date is usually set by US Transcom in accordance with all of those factors with it. So say your delivery date comes and your stuff is not getting delivered, depending on what type of shipment it is and why it's delayed, you could be eligible for an inconvenience claim. So say you have an unaccompanied baggage shipment and it's delayed, it's not arriving, but if it's at fault, the delay is at fault by AMC, Air Mobility Command, because it was going space A on one of their cargo planes. Unfortunately, you're not going to be able to file an inconvenience claim because it's something from the military, the government, that was the cause of the delay. So you're not eligible for a claim then. If the delay for that shipment was because your transportation service provider did not get the shipment to the airfield, by the time that they were supposed to, then that could be mean you're eligible for an inconvenience claim. So currently, an inconvenience claim, if you are eligible for one, you can claim up to 7 days of per diem. It's the meals and incidentals rate for the service member only for up to 7 days without needing receipts. So some folks go prepared for house camping and they take their air mattresses and stuff with them. And so this is a great option to be able to allow them to be able to get something for that inconvenience. If you are not those folks that, planned on house camping one way or another, you have to buy air mattresses, you have to buy towels or a cook set or anything, you can save your receipts for any of the essential items that are approved by your TSP, and you can submit your receipts for actual cost reimbursement. Now, it's very important to understand it's not the per diem rate plus what you spent rate. It's either the per diem rate or the actual cost of what you spent. Now, anything that the TSP does pay for in that inconvenience claim, if you did the actual cost reimbursement, they are allowed to pick up and take with them when they deliver your household goods. They are allowed to do that. I will tell you, in my experience, I've seen that happen very, very little. But to keep in mind, though, those items that you are purchasing that they are reimbursing you for are usually like store brand type items. So you're going to get the $5 standard fluff pillow from Target. They're not going to pay for the $80 memory foam gel inserts, whatever pillow. So it's very important to understand exactly what's covered versus what isn't, and your TSP should be able to provide you a list of what is acceptable versus what's not.
Thanks so much, Megan. It's been really great talking with you today. I know everyone's going to want to come and visit you in your booth too. So I'm just going to do my final farewells and then send everyone off to go visit you guys in your exhibitor booths. So we just really want to make sure that we thank USAA for their sponsorship of our webinar series, the MSF Cast, and I'm going to ask my team to share the links to join us for our next set of events. So we are so excited to have our Unite and Ignite is our theme for 2022. And Mary just dropped it in there. So we're still going to be using Whova. So you've already used this once. Now you're going to get to see how it works in our full virtual event. So we have a fantastic keynote speaker, Jennifer Dane of the Modern Military Association. USAA will be there again with us. JJ is going to play our fact or fiction. And then going into March, we're going to have our MSF Cast on tax tips with JJ. So just a note that there was a couple of booths that were giving away prizes. Kelly with Millie was giving away some prizes, as is PCS Grades. So if any one of you wants to come on and say goodbye or one last quick word, feel free to unmute yourself. Otherwise, we're going to say goodbye and we'll see you next time. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody.